computers. So we wrote everything out of books and out of our heads.
You're doing something that touches everybody globally, and people don't realize that it comes from this little town in the middle of Kansas. You can make water cold, or you can make a machine that sits in a corner and hums and doesn't do anything, but there's just something inherently cooler about things that you go start and drive around in.
60 years ago, in a small Midwestern town on the edge of the Kansas plains, a new kind of truck was invented. A truck that became indispensable to an industry. The 6 local families that started the enterprise some 15 years earlier could not have known how their manufacturing company would revolutionize cargo handling and develop into a worldwide market-leading brand. A brand synonymous with the name of that town, Ottawa. They began by building and repairing construction equipment, hydraulic and cable cranes, shovel attachments for tractors, and more. But the real story is not the products, but the people who made them. They poured their common sense, hard work, and can-do attitude into every part of the business. They faced serious challenges together and lifted their company from its humble beginnings to become the #1 producer of terminal tractors in the world. The year was 1943, and the world was at war. The shortages of wartime bred an atmosphere of engineering new products and retooling old machines.
Primarily, we were a machine shop, a weld shop, and an assembly point. And most of our machinery was acquired as a result of the end of the Second War. I personally remember the oldest machine dated back in the mid-1930s. We used it to where it broke down and couldn't fix it anymore, then take it out to scrap hopper and get rid of it and buy another used one and keep going. If it works, why get rid of it?
This led several local entrepreneurs to form Ottawa Steel Products. Focusing on the growing construction industry, the company began making heavy-duty backhoes and machines they called Hydra hammers, a unique machine created for breaking up concrete and tamping soil. Like almost every new company, Ottawa Steel Products had their share of difficulties as they fought to find a place in the competitive construction equipment market. In the early years, there were financial challenges. Employees received their paychecks on Tuesdays, but from time to time were asked to wait until Friday to cash them. Loyalty and team spirit were also kindled by the firing of popular plant superintendent and several of his staff in August of 1946. The announcement was greeted with a walkout by many of his employees. At an emergency weekend meeting of the board, it was revealed that Chief Engineer had instructed staff to draw plans that deviated from the existing designs in a way that would make the models more prone to breaking down. When the information was brought to light, his staff were reinstated. Ottawa Steel employees, committed to doing the job right, happily returned to work with one exception. The chief engineer who compromised the product was shown the door. Newspaper accounts of the explosion and intense fire that started in the paint shop on November 16, 1950, reported that the building at First and Walnut was nearly destroyed. The machinery and offices lay in ruin after the fire, and production was brought to a standstill. Not to be defeated by the catastrophe, the resilient Ottawa Steel employees turned out in full force, working day and night to restore manufacturing and shipping to full capacity in just 7 days. They believed in their ability to overcome any obstacle, and their dedication and determination put the factory back on its feet. But within a year, the people at Ottawa Steel were put to the test again, this time by a devastating flood. In the summer of 1951, torrential rain swept through the Midwest, causing creeks and rivers to spill out of their banks. The storms lasted 3 days, during which Ottawa received 11 inches of rain. 3.5 inches fell in just a 1-hour period on the morning of July 11th. Floodwaters ultimately crested at 39.5 feet, a full 2 feet higher than ever recorded. The deluge resulted in the complete destruction of the Ottawa Steel factory at First and Walnut. Machinery and inventory, valued at over $125,000, were waterlogged and covered in silt. For many businesses, a loss of this size would have led to bankruptcy, since there was no such thing as flood insurance.
I don't remember how we got across the flood, but we did go to work.
Forrest Kitts, my boss, was working at the plant on the other side of the river when the flood came up. Construction had started on this building.
The backbone and toughness of the Ottawa Steel employees rose to the challenge, working day and night to restore normal production and shipping operations soon after the flood waters receded.
We have that same mentality, that same great workforce here today. The extraordinary work that the workforce did to try to get caught back up and get those units out to the customers.
Rather than rebuild on the flooded ruins, it was decided to relocate the plant to higher ground. The company purchased 35 acres on the north side of Ottawa. Ground was broken in the fall of 1951 at 1313 North Hickory Street, and the new building was completed the following year. Production space at the new facility was 20,300 square feet. Yes, Ottawa employees came together in crisis, but they also came together for good times.
They would have the company picnics. Sometimes individual departments, such as the weld shop, would have their own parties out at Pomona Lake.
The annual summer picnic in the park brought families together to share food and fun.
We'd have games for the kids and food, and it was fun.
There were holiday parties, gift exchanges, and each Christmas, the plant manager would distribute turkeys to every employee to take home for their holiday dinner.
Never know how nice it feels and just how much it really means.
General Manager Harry Hal Lowther came from Young Spring and Wire in Chicago and began a program to expand the line of products produced at Ottawa Steel. He was credited with having the initial concept for a new kind of tractor, a vehicle that could speed up the process of moving trailers by the ingenious use of a hydraulic fifth wheel.
They get into a spot, a distribution center. You can't hook up and disconnect from a trailer very quickly. It's a lot of wear and tear on the driver when they're doing it.
His concept lived on, and his creation was soon to become the cornerstone of Ottawa Steel.
He said, we need to build trucks here for yard terminals so they can move the trailers without having to hook up to the regular cabs and take so long.
In 1958, Ottawa Wire and Steel introduces the terminal tractor to the world. Dubbed the Yard Hustler, Carl Bloomer and Cliff Lee are thought to be the two men responsible for building the first prototype.
Engineering would come, make the drawing of it, and put it all together.
The new design saved time and effort by employing a hydraulic fifth wheel instead of using a hand crank.
In the early days, it was a frame and an engine and some wheels and a boom.
Once a need to increase efficiency in trailer spotting at distribution centers, ports, and rail yards was identified, Ottawa workers came together once again to answer the call.
People tend to forget that we had several product lines running at the same time.
Terminal tractor manufacturing and sales were initially controlled from Bowling Green in the 1960s. E.L. Johnson set a new standard of excellence and customer service when he instituted a buyback policy. Manufacturing problems originating from the Bowling Green plant were quickly dealt with, and public confidence in the product and faith in the brand were restored.
You know, if we had issues, we tried to work together to figure out how to get them fixed and not make the same mistake again. It wasn't just get it out the door. It was get it out the door correctly. Yeah.
Engineering changes were incorporated into the new unit, returning it to the high quality for which the brand was known. The town continued to flourish in agriculture and manufacturing and remained a good place to raise a family. Ottawa Steel Products was known as a great place to work.
We've got a number of generational families over the years.
kids would come through the building, and then so you saw them as young kids, and now they're having kids too. So that span's been kind of interesting to watch.
Families were included into it, and it was nothing unusual to have wives and kids walking through the plant, being given a tour by their husband.
Just an immense sense of pride about what they do every day. Generations of pride that's poured into every unit. To me, that's pretty amazing that it's just carried through decade over decade, generation after generation.
The Yard Hustler had become the most successful product in the line. The company was averaging 2 trucks per day at the Ottawa and Bowling Green plants. In the early 1970s, competitive pressure and a struggling national economy began to have an impact on the organization. Hydra hammer manufacturing was slowing down due to heavy competition. Economic hardships fueled the decision to consolidate manufacturing into a single location. This decision was influenced largely by the positive attitudes and the overall spirit of cooperation displayed by Ottawa employees. In 1975, the plant was expanded into an 80,000 square foot facility at 450 East Dundee Street.
In the late 70s, we built like 300 trucks for the U.S. government, which were highly specialized. I mean, they had a spare tire, and they were big tires, big engines, special wiring, and then we did that for close to 9 months of working on those things. They were used in the NATO tunnels in Europe, and a lot of the places along the beaches, and so highly specialized. It was interesting to work on those trucks.
Labor strikes were common in the United States in the 1970s, and Ottawa wasn't immune. The first and only labor strike in the history of the company occurred in July of 1977.
I had worked there for about 3 weeks when the strike started. I chose to keep working. So there was a little vandalism, there were a few tires, and we were still building product. Because keeping in mind, at that time, we were pretty much vertically integrated. We built everything on the truck except for the cab skeleton, but all the parts that went in on the truck that we could build, we built. They actually cleaned the front office out and brought a whole bunch of people out of the front office, and they had them running machines. I remember several ladies out of the front office out running drill presses, and I'd go over and help them set the drill presses up so they could make parts.
Ultimately, management and the union reached an agreement in about a week, but not before management took turns answering the phones, helping clients, and office workers even mowed the front lawn.
And I remember I was out in the yard mowing because the grass was getting tall. Can't remember, I think it was Richard Morrow. He came up and he said, "You better get off that tractor, that's a union job." And I said, "Well, then you better tell this grass not to grow."
As the country slipped into a deep recession, Ottawa was directly affected too. In 1980, the company was forced to downsize, reducing its workforce by half within the span of 8 months. In 1983, an internal management team led by Berwin Bender purchased the company from Gulf Western, taking it private and renaming it Ottawa Truck Corporation. The team spearheaded an effort to redesign the yard tractors. The following year, 2 models were introduced, the YT30 and the YT50 terminal tractors. In an effort toward continued growth, the business expanded its product offering beyond port and terminal tractors to include refuse truck and fire truck chassis.
We were building refuse chassis, we were building fire trucks. That ran for several years, and then decided to build medium forklifts and the little Princeton 3-wheel forklift. Each of these product lines had their own crew, but the crew was generally picked from people that were already there in the plant working in assembly or sub-assembly, and those people were replaced by people from outside. The order intake on terminal tractors has gotten pretty large, so most of the people have been kept.
The company began to prosper again and grew to 100 employees with an annual sales volume of over $13 million. In the fall of 1989, Ottawa Truck acquired Beck Fire and Apparatus Company. Always on the lookout for opportunity, Ottawa Truck Corporation expanded its global footprint by merging with Sisu, Finland in 1994. Manufacturing space was expanded during this time to increase production capability, and soon, Sisu Terminal Systems was sold to Partech Oy. Partech also acquired the assets of Kalmar LMV in 1997 and merged Sisu Terminal Systems into Kalmar the next year. In April 1999, the Ottawa plant achieved the milestone of producing its 25,000th truck. In 2005, Cargotec was formed as the parent company for 3 divisions: Kalmar, Hiab, and McGregor. The Ottawa had become synonymous with the term terminal tractor, thanks to the continued innovation and dedication of the hard-working people at the plant.
I think Ottawa is the leader in its own category, clear market leader today. It's known for its quality, and with the new, especially with the new model right behind us here, we clearly again showing the way and shaping the industry. Ottawa fits into Cargotec perfectly. We want to be leader in all the categories we are in. We want to shape and lead the world cargo industry and logistic industries and bring out more efficiency and more better capabilities for our customers.
Regardless of the company ownership changing over, the reality is that we're building the same great product. We've got the same great workforce. They grew up in this community. There's a great sense of pride there, and ultimately it just goes right back into the product.
We've had people call up and say, I have this Ottawa terminal tractor, and they find out the serial number, and even though it was a competitor's truck, they thought it was an Ottawa. And so that's a good trade.
Kalmar Ottawa has maintained its leading position in the market by paying attention to the needs of its customers.
From generation to generation of the product, it's just really been moving along with what the needs are of the industry. Fuel consumption and emissions, trying to meet up with those regulations. But overall, the product has always served to fill that niche that didn't exist before.
I think innovation is highly important. I think there are still a lot of opportunities to actually really make the logistics industries overall more efficient. We want to outpace and out-invest our competitors and bring world-leading products to our customers.
In 2013, engineers began an ambitious project to completely redesign the Ottawa terminal tractor from the ground up.
The T2 evolution actually started 5 years or so before we actually started working on it. A lot of the work that had been done and kind of set on a back burner and leveraged it up into the T2. We've got a lot of experienced guys here that have been here for 30 plus years. That experience and field experience and talking to customers and leverage that into the new truck in a lot of ways.
2 years later, after numerous focus groups with customers and industry experts, the T2 was unveiled.
Yo, follow me.
It embodied the latest in driver comforts and operating efficiencies. In 2015, the company achieved yet another impressive milestone, delivering its 60,000th truck. Today, Kalmar Ottawa continues to grow and lead the industry it created. With an on-site test track, virtual testing facilities, and expanded parts department, Kalmar Ottawa continues to invest in the next industry-leading advancements. The truck that invented an industry continues to be built on the foundation of quality and ingenuity.
I think what keeps me coming back to work year after year for these years has been just the challenge, the day-to-day challenges of the vehicle.
I'm a car guy, and so this fits in with being an automotive engineer, and that part of it just never gets boring. And so I get to play trucks all the time.
I come to work every day with kind of a positive attitude of what can I do today to make an impact. I think it comes back to the community and being proud of the company.
Just as it has for over 60 years, each day still requires integrity and intelligence. And as always, the employees confidently know the best is yet to be. The commitment to go the extra mile and the passion to deliver a great product lives on in the people of Kalmar, Ottawa.